really is amazing how one little musical line can be so exciting. For example, whenever I hear that little trumpet call from The Incredibles, I get that reaction that mothers get when they see their child stuck under a car. They suddenly get superhuman strength and they feel like they could break down walls. As we're sitting around doing nothing and I hear ba-da-ba-ba-da, and I'm like, okay, let's go bench 600 pounds. The Incredibles is my most favorite Pixar film of all time. And if you don't believe me for whatever reason, just know that when I went to see this movie in theaters back in 2004, I had the most urgent bathroom need ever for at least an hour and a half. But I stayed in my seat like a dedicated fan because I didn't want to miss what I was seeing on screen. Some Pixar films have a lot more artistic merit, like WALL-E, Ratatouille, Up. All these films are better written. They have better animation because one of the very few aspects about The Incredibles that I don't like as much anymore is that the animation definitely doesn't hold up. But so far, I haven't seen any other Pixar film that has as much raw fun as this one. There are a variety of reasons why this is my most favorite one. Number one being the amazing ensemble cast of characters. More on that later. Another one being is the music by the one and only Michael Giacchino. It's incredibly difficult to hit that sweet spot of music where it's its own entity, it exists as its own incredible accomplishment, while also beautifully illustrating what's going on screen. Hans Zimmer can do this, Howard Shore can do this, and Michael Giacchino definitely can do this. You can just as easily listen to the Incredibles soundtrack all by itself and really enjoy every single note that you're hearing, while also enjoying how it's illustrating everything on screen perfectly. The Incredibles is a very rare animated movie because not only does it subvert your expectations about what you think an action movie is going to be, but it actively points out the cliches of your typical action film. It does so right from the beginning by taking an opening that you expect to be really thrilling and really heart-pounding like most action films are, and it starts off very quote-unquote slow. The characters are right in their golden years, and it's just the right amount of introduction to each character. It gives us just a little bit of taste as to who they are and what we expect from them. Mr. Incredible is a little bit selfish. Elastigirl can't even imagine settling down and having a family. And Frozone is just the coolest dude you'll ever meet. It also establishes the overall setting of it being kind of a 1960s-ish style, I suppose, with the TV and the lines that are going up and down and back and forth and the audio, and it's just really fun to watch. Even as a kid, I remember sitting there and thinking like, okay, this is going to be a little bit different than what I'm used to. Then after a few minutes of that, bam, we're right into the opening action scene. Now listen, that car that Mr. Incredible drives is amazing, and I want one for myself. But what happens if he misses the mark for putting on his suit? Like, it seems like he needs to be in the exact right spot for all those things to come together. Like, when he puts his hands up like this and the gloves come on, what if he is, like, not paying attention and he puts his hands up like this or he doesn't do it fast enough? Is he going to have to reset everything? Oh, and look, another reason to hate cats. Perhaps if it hadn't been for this stubborn cat on the tree, then maybe Buddy wouldn't have gotten to his car and wreaked havoc on his life. Then again, if it hadn't been for Buddy and or the cat, we wouldn't even have this movie, I guess. So you could argue that the cat is the pushing point of the entire plot, but still, cats are the worst. Mr. Incredible is stopped one more time by an attempted suicide attempt. And here's where you can see a strength and a weakness of Brad Bird. Brad Bird, the writer and director of The Incredibles, has both the pro and the con of sometimes inserting content into his films that are a little too mature, maybe a little too over kids' heads. In this movie alone, he has an attempted suicide. There is talk about insurance and exploiting loopholes and dodging every obstacle, and domestic fights, and implications about cheating on your spouse. In The Iron Giant, a classic cartoon that he also wrote and directed, there's a lot of talk about international terrorism and how countries maybe have developed this Iron Giant in order to potentially take over the world. In Ratatouille, there was a lot of talk about wills and taking over a company and what have you, and perhaps it's just because I didn't understand it, but I think it can sometimes, and more often than not, go way over kids' heads. Perhaps that was on purpose, though, because A, it appeals to adults, and B, if you're a kid or if you're young enough, you have to watch it again and again in order to get it. So everybody wins. Superheroes have to go into hiding, and now Mr. Incredible has to take a job at an insurance company, a very corrupt one at that. The role of Mr. Huff fits Wallace Shawn perhaps even better than it fits him as Rex. And it is such a joy to hear such an iconic voice say such lines like, "I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy. A company is like an enormous clock. Yes, precisely. We meet Alfredo Linguini long before he quits teaching to become a cook, and then we also meet Dash, whom I suspect the writers had to work really hard to find a name that fit his superpower. I mean, seriously, Dashiell? Has anyone ever heard of that name before? But kudos to them for finding it, because it is, of course, perfect. There's also a line that Bernie uses that I like to use in everyday life when I can, and let's be honest, everyone did for about 6 months after this movie came out. Coincidence? I think not! And then we're introduced to Violet, who is attracted to, and apparently everyone else in the school is, this dopey-looking guy named Tony. He thinks that he hears someone, so he turns around, but there's no one there, and then her head reappears. Surely somebody saw her head disappearing and then reappearing. I mean, that would have blown her identity immediately, right? Ah, yes, Tricycle Bubblegum Kid. What an underrated character. He doesn't say much, but when he does open his mouth, man, it's gold. And then we're introduced to a character who is rightfully not underrated, my man Frozone. Nice of you to drop by. Ha! Never heard that one before. Frozone and Mr. Incredible go off under the pretense of going bowling, but instead they're sitting in a car trying to relive the glory days and listen to radio scanners. I love how the movie further deconstructs the cliches of villains monologuing. And Frozone makes such a great point. It's like, you have the opportunity to kill the superhero, why don't you just do it? And if you think that that cliche doesn't exist anymore, just watch any James Bond movie. They go and save a bunch of people from a burning down building, and unfortunately they stumble into a jewelry store. And a rookie cop comes in, Frozone takes that drink, and he says, freeze. Now, all you physicists who are watching, because I know you're out there, can ice stop a bullet at such a close range? Please let me know. Bob comes home, and then Helen doesn't exactly like what he's been doing with his time, either tonight or for many months leading up to this point, and the fight that they have is painfully realistic. Barrage then plants an iPad into Bob's suitcase, and I guess Brad Bird predicted facial recognition technology before it was even a thing. Mr. Incredible once again dons his suit to relive the glory days, and he completes it by putting on the worst mask in the history of superheroes. I mean, seriously, it looks like a high school senior putting on too much mascara for their senior prom. I mean, you look like a raccoon. A child could recognize who you are. The first fight between Mr. Incredible and the Omnidroid is super entertaining and super fun to watch, and it shows that Mr. Incredible has still got it. Except for in the realm of physical flexibility, I suppose. I mean, he just took like this Omnidroid, threw him into the lava, but once he does a little victory dance, then, oh, my back! Life is golden again, and it shows just how amazing life can be when you have a nice positive attitude. You lose about 14 inches off your waist, and you have a little bit of money. But little inconveniences build up once again in your life, one of them being that you need a patch job, so Mr. Incredible goes off to not only one of the best, if not the best character in the movie, but one of the best animated characters of all time. I love when he shows up to her lair, I guess, and he puts down his glasses and she just goes, my God, you've gotten fat. She says that after he lost 14 inches off his waist. Can you imagine if he showed up there in his full 50? There's a really fun story about how Brad Bird came to voice Edna. Yes, the writer and director of this movie is actually the voice of Edna. They called in a female actress to, try out some voices and see if she could fit the character, and Brad Bird began reading her lines to her in his Edna voice. And the actress had the humility to say, what do you need me for? You got her. Supermodels. Nothing super about them. Spoiled, stupid little stick figures with poofy lips who think only about themselves. I used to design for gods. Every line that comes out of her mouth is just pure gold. And if any of you aspire to be superheroes, just remember, use ironclad advice, no capes. Mr. Incredible then meets Syndrome, a grown-up buddy, who was actually modeled after Brad Bird. I don't know much about Brad Bird's personality or his general disposition these days, but I know that back in the day, he was considered to be quite intense. Syndrome himself is actually a pretty terrifying villain because he is so unhinged in his brattiness. He is compulsive and he is vengeful, but there's no intellect, there's no intelligence back there to give him any kind of reasoning as to what he's doing, or even to hold him back from his psychotic tendencies. He does have some pretty awesome technology, though, gotta give him that. I'm sure his 0-point energy stuff comes in handy a lot. I mean, we all know how awesome it would be to have the Force, but imagine if you had that 0-point energy thing, and you were just sitting on the couch and the remote is staggering 8 feet away, you could just bzzz and bring it over to you. I like to think of this movie as being separated into two distinct parts. The first hour takes its time and it really builds this world of superheroes and all these amazing characters, and then the next hour is just pure awesome fun. In my opinion, the shot where Mr. Incredible looks over the cliff and he's trying to infiltrate Syndrome's base is the exact moment where the second half begins. Mr. Incredible discovers the truth based off of the tip-off that Gazer Beam brilliantly gave him, but then Elastigirl goes ahead and ruins it all. The scene where all those black bubbles or whatever they are come down and capture Mr. Incredible is one of the reasons why I love good editing so much, because it can completely change the feel of the scene. I mean, it is the feel of the scene. Without this intense, almost seizure-inducing editing, we would have about a tenth of the feel of how intense it is for Mr. Incredible to actually be in over his head for once and not be in control of the situation despite his incredible super strength. The airplane scene, one of the most intense scenes in cinematic history, had an amazing team of writers behind it who were fully dedicated to putting as much realistic dialogue into it as they possibly could. You can be assured that almost every line that is said in this particular scene is accurate, and it is how planes actually land when they show up into some kind of land. I feel like Elastigirl is a lot like Skylar White from Breaking Bad. Though she is trying to take her husband and pull him away from his ambitions and away from the things that he loves, she also can't help but be caught up in it herself. Turns out the kids had stowed away too, and Elastigirl rightfully asked them what happened to Jack Jack, but they left him with this incredibly dorky and wonderful babysitter named Kari. And I love how the writers took such a comical scene and turned it into one of their best shorts, Jack Jack Attack. If you haven't seen it, go see it right now. Syndrome decides to send them a little greeting, and man, in this scene, Dash and Violet's necks just get abused. I mean, first Elastigirl does the barrel roll and their necks slam up into the ceiling, and then when they're flying down into the ocean, Elastigirl grabs both of them and snaps it to a parachute and gives them whiplash. I mean, any of those things would kill them. Roll credits. There's another scene right after they land and get into a cave and build a fire where it touches upon another cliche, movie villains. A lot of cartoons depict villains as being kind of slow, kind of dumb, and being merciful if there are kids involved. But Elastigirl wisely points out, just because you're children, that doesn't mean they're going to exercise restraint. They will kill you if they get a chance. It's a pretty hard reality check, but that is the reality. Superhero movies these days touch more upon the problems of having superpowers rather than just the benefits, but I feel like The Incredibles was one of the first ones to do so. The scene where Elastigirl gets stuck in all those doors and she, for the first time at least, the first time the viewer can see it, begins to experience the problems of having her superpowers, it's really hilarious and gives the movie that just a little bit more realism. So Elastigirl has her showcase scene, but now it's time for Dash's and Violet's showcase scene. The 100-mile dash, or so the musical number is called, is the pinnacle of the movie. It has amazing high-speed action, incredible score, and it's just an amazing display of how much fun you can have with super speed. A little giggle that Dash lets out when he runs across the water is a little cheesy, a little cringy, but still awesome. And then at the very pinnacle of their dominance, where it seems like they have everything under control, Syndrome comes down and just ruins the ride. Syndrome captures all of them, and he does his little evil villain speech, him on everyone's super. No one will be. And then he does yet another evil laugh as he walks out. But then the next shot is him just sniffing and wiping his nose. Now, in animation, you have to be so intentional. Every single shot, every single second has to be so well planned and thought out. So there's just no way that they didn't think long and hard about including the fact that he does a little sniff and nose wipe. And I just can't believe that it was just an accident or like a little joke that an animator put in. I think it was put in there just to show how stupid he actually is, just how weak of a character he is. Just because he did this little evil laugh doesn't mean that he is nothing more than a pathetic little boy. Now, I'm sorry, but I've never understood why the "Where is my super suit?" line is so popular and or quotable. I tend to gravitate more towards the "Pretty good, I am your wife. I'm the greatest good you are ever gonna get." Either way, the scene is wonderful, and I'm so thankful that it's in the movie. The battle for Metropolis, or whatever the city is called, ensues, and it's a wonderful, amazing scene. Although all the callbacks, I will say, are a bit overplayed. Even though it is a cartoon and it's made for kids, you should still respect the audience and not constantly drill into them that Mr. Incredible is remembering this one event in the movie that will give him a key into present events. I'm not sure how I feel about the second resolution with Syndrome. It seems like everything is done, everything's wrapped up, even though there is a little bit of ambiguity to Syndrome's fate and to the superhero's fate, which I think is a great ending. But then to bring Syndrome back into the picture feels a little tiring. The pace of this movie is so good up to this point, but then they try to cram as much possible stuff into the last 10 minutes or so, and I think it would have been better if they could have maybe saved some of that content and put it into the sequel, making it much better than just a mediocre little film. But hey, we get Cool Tricycle Kid again. That was totally wicked! Which, by the way, is the best possible way that I could describe this movie, and that's why I'm giving it a 9.3 out of 10. So, have you guys seen The Incredibles? If you have, what did you think about it? What are your comments on it? Whatever they are, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next cinematic adventure.